When Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin opened in 1998, it was little more than a quickly thrown together attraction using a 26-year-old ride system meant to promote Pixar's upcoming film, Toy Story 2. However, with Space Ranger Spin having expanded to every major Disney resort and having entertained guests across the globe for over 20 years, this simple yet wildly entertaining ride has proven it has what it takes to stand alongside some of Disney's best attractions. So let's explore the history of the ride with more names than I care to count: Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin, and Astro Blasters, and Laser Blast, and Planet Rescue, and Astro Blaster, singular. That's all. The origin of Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin traces back to long before the Toy Story franchise had even been conceptualized, as the attraction's ride system and show building were born out of a desperate need to give Tomorrowland a satisfying attraction lineup in the early 1970s. You see, when the Magic Kingdom first opened on October 1st of 1971, Tomorrowland was completely unfinished and only offered guests two attractions: the Grand Prix Raceway and the Skyway to Fantasyland. Two further attractions, both Disneyland clones, opened shortly after, with America the Beautiful debuting in the Circle Vision 360 Theater on November 25th, and Flight to the Moon opening on Christmas Eve of 1971. Still, with only 4 total attractions, all of which had Disneyland counterparts that had been open for well over a decade, Walt Disney World visitors couldn't help but feel that Tomorrowland fell short of expectations, and the land quickly gained a reputation as being rather barren, uninspired, and lacking in the detailed theming the rest of the park was rich with. Because of this, Disney promised guests the lands would soon see several additions, the first of which was quickly thrown together in just under 1 year. At this time, Imagineers were already neck-deep in work, as they made progress on 2 other planned Tomorrowland expansions, Space Mountain and the Wedway People Mover, both of which would eventually open in 1975. However, guest satisfaction with the current state of Tomorrowland was only decreasing, and Imagineers needed something to tide guests over without spending more money than absolutely necessary. With these restrictions in mind, it was decided a new attraction would be built in the already constructed and currently unused annex near the Circle Vision Theater, and would use an identical Omnimover ride system to the one already in use in Liberty Square's Haunted Mansion. To further save on cost, Walt Disney World reached out to their official airline, Eastern, who agreed to sponsor an air travel themed attraction with a budget of $10 million. And so, If You Had Wings was born, a ride quickly pieced together and built in an unused annex, using a recycled ride system and funded entirely by an outside source. Not exactly a recipe for Disney success. The attraction went from conception to construction to completion in just under 5 months, ridiculously fast by any standards, and was ready to open by June of 1972. We won't go into all of the ride details of If You Had Wings in this video, as we will more than likely cover the subject in depth in a future episode, but there are a few important things to note. If You Had Wings, despite being an unticketed attraction that was free to all guests, was one of the least popular attractions in all of the Magic Kingdom for its entire run. The ride was more or less a showcase of various locations that could be visited using Eastern Airlines, and the attraction featured no animatronics, only projections that left most guests unimpressed. Wait times were virtually non-existent even on the park's busiest days, and the ride was widely known as the cool-down attraction, where guests could walk on, enjoy the air conditioning for just under 5 minutes, and move on to the more popular Magic Kingdom experiences. The various iterations of If You Had Wings also caused Disney an unprecedented amount of trouble over its relatively short history. In just 26 years, If You Had Wings went through 5 different names and variations, all utilizing the same aviation theme and Omnimover ride system. The original If You Had Wings lasted until 1987, when Eastern Airlines pulled out of their sponsorship before going bankrupt shortly after. If You Had Wings was replaced by If You Could Fly, which opened just 5 days after If You Had Wings closed, as it was essentially the same attraction with new themed music and all references to Eastern Airlines removed. If You Could Fly was even less popular than the original, as fans missed the previous music, and lasted only 18 months, when Delta agreed to sponsor a new aviation-themed attraction, Delta Dreamflight, which opened just 6 months after that in June of 1989. Delta Dreamflight was a new experience, but retained the exact same Omnimover system. Instead of taking a flight through various Delta destinations, Delta Dreamflight instead took guests on a journey through aviation history and was considerably more popular than its predecessor, but still rarely had a wait time of more than 10 minutes. Unfortunately, Delta Dreamflight lasted for just 6 years, as Delta unexpectedly ended their sponsorship of the attraction in December of 1995. The attraction was renamed Dreamflight for 6 short months, from January 1st to June 4th of 1996, and on that day the ride was closed again for a 24-hour refurbishment that removed all references to Delta and again replaced the original music. The ride was reopened as Take Flight just 1 day later, which unsurprisingly closed just 18 months after that, and Take Flight ended the dynasty of airport-themed attractions when it shut down on January 1st of 1998 to make way for a brand new experience based on Pixar's upcoming sequel, Toy Story 2.
Howdy, howdy, folks! It's good to be back!
Greetings.
Wait. Stop the film. Is he in this too?
Excuse me, pull-string boy. What would Toy Story 2 be without Buzz Lightyear?
A good movie.
When Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin was officially announced to the public on January 15th of 1998, it was met with significant backlash from regular visitors of the Disney parks. At this time, Pixar had only released one film, the original Toy Story, back in 1995, and the idea of Disney creating rides based on other studios' animated films was a foreign concept to die-hard parkgoers. Disney had already announced plans for another Pixar-based attraction in the soon-to-be-opened Animal Kingdom, an audio animatronic show titled It's Tough to Be a Bug, but the upcoming fourth gate was nowhere near as sacred to Disney fans as the Magic Kingdom. Regardless, Disney moved forward with the attraction as planned, advertising the upcoming experience as a dark ride arcade shooter hybrid. Disney had previously considered adding an attraction that would arm guests with weapons with their Scrap Nostromo ride based on the Alien franchise, in which guests would have had to fend off a xenomorph that would periodically attack the ride vehicles. Senior Imagineers at the time had balked at the idea, thinking a ride that would arm children against xenomorphs would be far too frightening, and instead opted for the lovely, scare-free, and child-friendly Alien Encounter, an attraction that definitely didn't scar thousands of children for life. Space Ranger Spin, however, was very family-friendly despite the shooting element, and was to be based primarily on the opening scene of the upcoming Toy Story sequel, following Buzz Lightyear as he attempts to defeat the evil Emperor Zurg. The ride kept the same Omnimover system and show building from 1972, and as such construction was relatively simple, beginning in March of 1998 and reaching completion in September of the same year. Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin held its soft opening on October 7th of 1998, making it the first Pixar-based attraction to open in the Magic Kingdom and the second at Walt Disney World, as It's Tough to Be a Bug had opened alongside Animal Kingdom 6 months prior. At this time, A Bug's Life was still 4 months from release, and Toy Story 2 wasn't set to open for over a year, meaning there were officially twice as many Pixar-themed attractions than there were Pixar films for nearly half a year. Luckily, this did nothing to deter visitors from crowding the newest Magic Kingdom attraction on opening day, and when guests first entered the show building to Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin, there was one element of the queue that could not be missed: a 5.5-foot tall Buzz Lightyear animatronic standing next to a large Viewmaster that informs guests they are currently at Star Command Base, and that visitors to the base, the Star Command recruits, would be traveling to Planet Z to defeat Emperor Zurg, who had been stealing batteries from toys across the galaxy. The animatronic utilized a small projection inside Buzz Lightyear's helmet, which allowed for far more accurate and realistic expression and facial movement. The entirety of the queue featured larger-than-life elements to create the illusion that visitors were the size of the toys themselves, as despite Zurg apparently having an entire planet, he was still just an action figure. Once through the queue, guests would board their Omnimover vehicles, disguised as XP-37 Star Cruisers, which were each equipped with 2 mounted laser cannons and a center joystick that allowed riders to turn the guests whichever direction they chose, a new addition to the Omnimover system. Guests would then travel through various show scenes, passing by hundreds of Zurg's minions, each equipped with a small target guests could shoot to maximize their score. Eventually, guests would encounter the evil mastermind himself, Emperor Zurg, and back in 1998, this was the very first time Toy Story fans were able to see the villain Buzz Lightyear had mentioned so many times in the original Toy Story.
Don't talk to me about importance. Because of you, the security of this entire universe is in jeopardy.
What? What are you talking about?
Right now, poised at the edge of the galaxy, Emperor Zurg has been secretly building a weapon with the destructive capacity to annihilate an entire planet. I alone have information that reveals this weapon's only weakness. And you, my friend, are responsible for delaying my rendezvous with Star Command.
Unfortunately, no matter how well the guests had performed, Zurg could not be stopped without help, and the ride vehicles head through an emergency escape hatch where they are whisked into space before running into Zurg yet again. With the help of Buzz Lightyear, who shows up in the nick of time, Zurg is defeated and the ride comes to an end, where guests can check how their scores stacked up to other players. Possible ranks range from the embarrassing level 1 Star Cadet, all the way to Galactic Hero, which required a maximum score of 999,999, and those skilled few are able to redeem a special prize from a cast member. Over the years, the prizes have varied from pins to buttons to stickers, but all Galactic Heroes are well compensated for their top skills. Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin was nothing short of a smash hit with Disney parkgoers, as the attraction was noted for its wide appeal, as anyone from a small child to a full group of adults could easily get into the competitive groove of the ride and have a great time. Children in particular had nothing but high praise for Space Ranger Spin, and some of their very eloquent thoughts can be heard here.
It's kind of like a ride. We sit down and they're like these rocket ships. There's like guns on the seats that you sit down, and like we have to shoot all of the bad guys. I think his name is Dr. Z or something. Actually, his name is just Z. I shot one Z, and then we lost the ship a lot, and then he crashed it. It had the laser gun, and you shoot the aliens with marshmallows. And every single time I was like, bow, 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 bow.
Space Ranger Spin has went on to become the Disney attraction with the most locations around the world, as every major Disney resort has had some variation of Space Ranger Spin over the years, and there are even more outside of the major Disney resorts. Between the years of 2004 and 2006, the ride expanded to every existing Disney resort under various names, with Tokyo Disneyland's version opening in 2004, the original Disneyland and Hong Kong Disneyland's opening in 2005, and Disneyland Paris's debuting in 2006. With the exception of Disneyland Paris, the ride was named Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters in all new locations, and in Paris the ride was called Buzz Lightyear Laser Blast. Despite being a very similar ride to Space Ranger Spin, Astro Blaster and Laser Blast's biggest difference came in the form of the ride vehicles, which featured laser cannons that could be lifted from their holster and freely fired, as opposed to Space Ranger Spin where the blasters were mounted to the vehicle. Over 10 years later, another version of the ride was opened alongside the brand new Shanghai Disneyland Resort in June of 2016, this time with yet another name, Buzz Lightyear Planet Rescue. Shanghai's version uses the same ride system as the others, and features similar ride vehicles, weaponry, and an identical scoring system, but Planet Rescue is much more closely based to the opening scene of Toy Story 2, and features Buzz Lightyear much more heavily via the use of screens. Despite being much newer, Planet Rescue has faced heavy criticism due to its enemy variety, as instead of featuring a wide range of different colorful enemies for guests to shoot, Planet Rescue largely features the same enemy type over and over, which makes for a much less exciting experience. Believe it or not, there are still more versions of the ride out there. Disneyquest, the indoor theme park in Walt Disney World's Disney Springs, featured a ride called Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blaster, singular, which despite sharing the same name with 3 of the 6 main versions of the ride, was essentially a glorified bumper cars that allowed Disneyquest visitors to shoot small rubber balls at other vehicles. Disney also officially released an online version of Astro Blasters to coincide with the release of Disneyland's version in 2005. The online arcade game communicated in real time with guests in Anaheim, and the higher the current riders in California scored, the better the online player would do. The game was online for only 2 short years, but can still be downloaded for offline play for those of you that remember the short-lived arcade shooter. Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin and its several Space Ranger spin-off attractions are almost all still operating today. When Disneyquest closed its doors, so did their odd version of Astro Blasters, and of the main attractions, only Hong Kong Disneyland has shut down the ride, closing its doors in 2017 to make way for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Nano Battle, which is little more than a reskin of Hong Kong's Astro Blasters. Of all the Pixar-based attractions that have opened over the past 2 decades, few have been as popular as Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin and its successors. This is a ride that many have described as a modern classic, fun for every age and universally entertaining, and we can only hope the ride's ongoing popularity keeps it in the Disney parks for years to come, maybe even to infinity and beyond.
Greetings, Space Rangers.
Greetings, Space
I
Rangers.
am Buzz Lightyear.
I am Buzz Lightyear.
I want to tell you personally that Star Command was
very proud of your work.
Battling the evil Emperor Zurg today at Space Ranger Spin.
Zurg was at it again?
Zurg was at it again?
Indeed he was.
Indeed he
But our
was.
friend stopped his
But our
evil
friend
plan.
stopped his evil plan.
Congratulations, Space Rangers.
Congratulations, Space Rangers.